So good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome folks to the October 13th meeting of the Concord Historical Commission and do a roll call to make sure that we do have a quorum, which I believe we do. So please state your name, starting with you, Michael.
Michael Capizzi.
Nancy.
Nancy Nelson.
Chessie.
Patsy Cataldo.
And Melissa Salfield. So I, Michael, and Nancy are full members, so we constitute the quorum. So indeed, we do have a quorum. And I'd like to welcome our first guest and the first item on the agenda, which is the Wright Tavern preservation restriction. And Tom Wilson is here to speak to that. So Tom, would you like to take the floor?
Okay, thank you very much, Melissa. So hello, everyone, and happy rainy Thursday evening. So hope everybody's dry and warm and all that. So the I took back the request of setting up the preservation restriction public access, the 64 days, back to both our board and to the trustees and to the standing committee at First Parish. So I've been doing some, conversation with people, and there is the concerns are not about the well, there are some concerns about the current immediate thing, and I'll discuss that in a second. The question really is, we really don't know at this point about exactly what the nature of the opening will be, and what we've got this vision, but whether or not reality will actually meet that is really the question, and not just now, but forever. And so the group was very much supportive of a common mission that we have, which is to have the building be open to the public. That's the path we're on. There's a lot of commitment. I think I mentioned to you last time we had the preservation restriction brought before the entire congregation back in June. Virtually unanimous support. So there's a lot of support for doing this. So I think it's really more of some of the detail requirements and more of the concerns about what it'd be like in the future. So the group, so the suggestion that we would like to make as a modifications to it is that we would define the public to not just be the general public, but would also include, organizations that like when we have school groups to come and be part of the Wright Tavern experience. We bring meetings, and particularly community-oriented meetings, not Wright Tavern, not First Parish meetings, but meetings done by outside organizations. So the sense that the building is being used as a public meeting house, which is what taverns used to be. So the idea would be, can we define public in a broader way than just one would assume, just the general public? And the second concern that the board had is, once again, we don't know, in 2024, will we need to staff it with people? Will we have technology? What will be there? And therefore, will we be ready to take the visitors that we're talking about, a full opening of the visitors? And maybe what we could do, until we know what the staffing and the financial requirements would be, our idea was, a suggestion was, that came out of the Wright Tavern board was, could we set a commitment that says, okay, in 2025, which essentially would be the year after we open, because we plan on opening in sometime in 24. So we could have like 25 days in 2024, let's say, 40, I think I said 48 days in 2025, and then 65 days in 2026. So in other words, it gives us like a 3-year ramp to get to that point. And then after this commitment applies. I don't think, was again, if we're successful, we'll blow through that requirement within 2.5 months. But we just don't know. There's so many unknown variables. So the group is uncomfortable with committing to something with so much unknown. And I found that they were, so we're looking for mitigating opportunities to set this thing up in a way that would really be, in keeping with what we're all trying to do, but giving some protection to First Parish's requirements to really make sure this building is open to public and open to the public. So those were my suggestions. And so what I sent to you in the materials was the original document, the modifications that came from our last meeting with you all, and then the modifications we're suggesting, which were in blue. So that's it.
Well, I'd like to ask other members of the commission their reaction to this, Tom's proposed change. Nancy?
Well, I have a couple of basic questions first, if I could ask those. Maybe this goes to Anne. First of all, going through all these materials this evening, I'm curious whether or not the grant agreement was ever signed and whether or not we can get a copy of that. And then related to that is, we did approve the PR with the exception of this open question of days open to the public. But there are a lot of suggestions made at that meeting, so I don't know that we know what the current draft plan looks like, or the draft PR looks like, and we don't know if the grant agreement has been approved and signed by all parties, by the town and Wright Tavern, and whether or not they're consistent. That's not in my bailiwick. That's a legal issue that I think somebody should look at. So then I would like, I think in the grant agreement, Tom, and I think maybe this has been done, but I haven't seen them have plans. We're supposed to go to CHC and CPC before any work started, but we haven't seen anything at CHC.
Okay,
Maybe CPC has, because they went to the treasurer and staff. But it's of interest because those contracts and whatnot would include Lynn Spencer's work. So that would just be in the form of an update. And then I think there's a real distinction to be made between meetings of sort of in-town partners and school groups. And I'm guessing you have a lot of meeting space upstairs on the second floor that will not have public access, but I remember seeing that meeting spaces were identified downstairs. So, it's a real question in my mind how those are sort of public, but they are not the general public. And so I'd be looking still for a rather fulsome benefit. But I think the language that was originally there in that number 5 public access, it says, unless otherwise mutually agreed upon by the grantor or grantee. That's helpful, I think, to you guys and to us. What also might be helpful would be language that would say, I don't know where you are in your thinking about what's structural stabilization and what's moving you towards the vision, whatever it is. And there might be something said that Wright Tavern reimbursements would be for stabilization until it's known whether or not your fundraising is going anywhere and what the ultimate plan is. Anne might be able to straighten me out if I've miscommunicated anything there, but I'm still concerned about I don't know how the public use gets divided up. I'm looking for a higher floor for general public access, like when the family from Iowa comes by. If you guys are having meetings in there, that precludes that kind of walk in, walk around. And if you have school groups there, that also probably precludes the access of, the tourists that are coming by. So that's the balance I'm still kind of looking for. Sorry to be so long.
Anne, did you want to pick up on some of the questions that Nancy mentioned first? Because I'm, as far as I know, we're up to date on all the signed contracts and selling agreements, and everything has been sent over because we're getting reimbursements.
I know, and I sit on CPC too, so I have to ask if those, what's in the grant, has it been signed?
Yeah.
And are we following what's in the grant? That's a question for everybody, I guess.
So is it just one?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because we would, I would like the answer to that too, because I keep saying a lot of money's been spent on this and I don't know what's been spent on.
Right. So there are two grants, right?
I can't quite hear you, Ann.
Oh, I'm sorry. There are,
Well, I'll turn up my volume, see if that helps.
Everybody turn there, it's hard for us to hear you too, I don't know and it's at 100% here as well.
Okay, I just turned up my volume, that might help.
so there are two grants. One was just signed recently. They've both been signed by both parties. One was just signed recently, but the money is not flowing on that one until this preservation restriction is in place. The first grant didn't have that stipulation, but it did require that they submit all of the drawings and contracts prior to the CPC releasing any funds. And so they have complied with that. And so now the funds are flowing on that first grant.
Okay, I do think the first grant had that language about the PR being filed with the state and everything.
But it didn't say that the funds could not flow until that's in place, whereas the second one said that the preservation restriction was that there could be no flow of
Right.
funds until the restriction was signed.
The first one was to be filed with the CPC. The second one was being filed with the state.
The
and all
first
that. So,
one was also the state. We can figure that out later, but
yeah, that's not,
second requirement basically mirrored the first is what I thought was happening. But in any case, that's a question.
the second question, Nancy, I think the second floor, we cannot really allow for a public access because it does not meet ADA compliance. And so whether meetings and stuff like that go up there, we're really talking about the first floor. And that's the first floor is really what we're really speaking to in terms of public access, because the public's not going to be accessible on the second floor. And so what we're talking about here is the use of the first floor, which includes the sun porch, which is a great meeting space. And, the smaller rooms are, we're trying to set them up to do that as well. I'm not sure to answer your question, but so if we're having a meeting, if the school group is using the building and we're having a program with the school group and a family from Ohio shows up, I mean, we might be able to let them in, but probably not because the school group will be using it. So,
well, I don't think those are,
I'm not sure what that means, but
there have been architectural offices up there and other
Right.
offices and other retail enterprises even
Right.
on
Yeah.
the second floor. So I think there's something, if it's private, you can continue to do that. And downstairs is what would be universally accessible.
exactly. And it's related to questions about where we're on the contracts, and Melissa, your question, perhaps we should get Lynn, because Lynn and Peter Nobley are really in charge of the building. Peter from our board and Lynn Spencer, because she's running that project, all those projects. There's been a lot of discussion about what happens to the roof structure and a number of other things that I'm not familiar with, so I don't want to speak to those. But perhaps I could easily ask them to come attend next month's meeting, and that might be helpful to answer your questions and have Lynn and Peter speak where we stand and what the drawings are and what the plans are. One thing we are doing, and this is kind of related to a question about the usage plans, is that tomorrow actually we're having a meeting with the exhibit designers who are presenting to us and also to what we've now created as a historic experts advisory panel, which is made up of 8 independent individuals, some of which are on this committee, like Ryan Hanley and Bob Gross, as well as Dennis Fiore and a number of others. I can tell you who they are. Jane Gordon, for example, Ann Forbes. They'll be attending the meeting tomorrow and hearing for the first time the ideas, plans that the exhibit designers are thinking about for the use of that first floor, and to some extent, some of the basement as well, where the original kitchen was. So
Well-
we'll have more about that once we get some feedback from them and some feedback from the group, and I want to share those with you because they're all quite exciting. But I've literally got the documents tonight, and so the meeting's tomorrow, and so I can't really share. It's really quite exciting.
That would be helpful to know what you're actually planning
Yeah,
beyond just meetings.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. In fact, I was. When
That
we
would
get to-
help us understand what's an appropriate level, I
Yeah.
think, of public access.
So we're looking to get it to where we have something that there's a general agreement on from our historical experts as well as our board, that about what it's going to look like, and then we can, we want to begin. We very much have a whole process of wanting to review it, both with CPC and CHC, as what the plans are. But one of the things that is always cautionary in these things, these are ideas, they're not locked in plans. And so we're looking for input. We're not looking to say this is it and we're, so done a deal. So we're trying to move along a process that's going to take really the next several months. Our plans are for probably through November, December, to go through a number of different iterations with the expectations that we would have the plans pretty much developed in January. And so that at that point in time, sometime probably after the holidays, we want to have more communications about the plans and designs. So that Lynn in turn can say, okay, this is what you need. That's what we're going to build. And then her group and her contractors would then work on the construction and getting the contracts and all that sort of stuff. We're on sort of a tight time frame because we're trying to get this thing open by Patriots Day in 2024. Something will be open by then. I'm not sure how thorough and how complete it will be, but that's all about getting with contractors and all this sort of stuff. But just to let you know that things are in motion.
It'd be great to see those contracts and maybe the ones that exist already. So we'll at least have an idea of what's
Yeah.
happening out there
Sure.
in terms of the oversight and the management of the
Yeah.
project, what
Yeah.
direction you're going and
Yeah.
so on and so forth.
Exactly.
And may
so I-
have copies of those at this point or not?
Pardon me?
Does Anne have copies of those contracts that then you wouldn't have to repeat that?
Well, she has all the contracts of things that we have contracts right now for people we have contracts with, like Lynn and there's the structural engineer and people like that.
The exhibit
Um,
designer, so on. Okay, that's helpful.
Thank you, Tom. So Chessie, you have comments about, they're back to the time frame?
Yes, and I'll run through list style like Nancy did. Just my first comment as a matter of drafting is that you start out in the first sentence using the phrase "the main floor of the building," and then you switch to the right tavern and the tavern. And I think consistency is important there because obviously what we're concerned about is public access to the first floor. So I would just use the same phrasing throughout that,
Okay.
throughout this provision.
Okay.
And then I was confused by the second sentence when I read it. It starts out with the concept of defining what the public is, and then it kind of veers into defining what open means. It's almost like there's two different concepts that aren't fully fleshed out, or it may potentially should be moved into changed to two sentences, but I just thought that was a bit confusing. And then I echo Nancy's concern about the scope of meetings by community focused organizations, both how that term would be defined, and then also it does seem like a little bit of a workaround. Like if you had a group who you permitted to have a weekly meeting there 52 weeks a year, that would go a long way towards getting to the 64 days, which obviously is not the spirit of what we've been discussing. And then I would propose, considering since it's looking like it's going to be a tiered build up to the 64 days.
Mhm.
Maybe a sentence added that says something like the dates and times when the subject property, or however you want to phrase it, when the subject property will be open to the public must be annually published and provided to the grantee, just to keep a running list of when it's open and what's being considered open to the public.
That makes sense.
And then where does that unless otherwise mutually agreed upon, does that stay or go?
I would say that stays. I agree with you. I think that's an adequate protection for
Mhm.
a lot of the
Mhm.
concerns that Tom was
Mhm.
saying the group has about when everything will be up and running.
I mean, I presume that, you know, if we feel that it's not adequate, we can come to you and
Right.
say, we'd like a discussion about this.
Right,
I mean,
absolutely.
We all understand in the first year, 2023, which is next year, you are going to be working on the property. So there's not an expectation, I don't think.
Right, right.
But certainly by 2024, which is the target year that you've talked about,
Right.
even if the exhibits aren't completed, because you still don't know what they're going to be, we would expect the public gets to go in there.
Mhm.
I
Yes.
mean, I still am uncomfortable with the 64 days. That one just about popped out of my head, I
Right.
talked about 7 months. It's hardly scientific.
Comfortable.
Right.
But
Especially-
I think you understand, it just doesn't feel, I know because you don't know exactly what it's going to look like. And I'm glad
Yeah.
that you convened this group of people. Those are excellent people. It's nice to have one of our members on it and a past member and Bob. Certainly Dennis, Jane, Ann Forbes, Jane Gordon. It's a stellar group, but I guess I just to say it one more time, I wish that group had been convened 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, me too. So, yeah,
Because from day one, that has been the frustration, because for everybody, you included, I understand that, exactly what is this going to be?
And I think with my CPC hat on, it's a matter of protecting public investment. So it's important to know what we're buying so far. And then I remember, I think the last presentation to CPC had a very ambitious fundraising target. So maybe
Mhm.
not fair to ask you that here, but I'll ask you that at the CPC meeting. What's your progress on fundraising? Because it was that's what a lot of the ability to open and to have something to present to the public. That's where a lot of that money will come from.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I'd like it, Michael, would you like to weigh in?
Well, no, I think what needed to be said has been stated. I'm just a little confused about one thing. The recommended changes on a document that I have in front of me, these are the changes that we're recommending. Isn't that correct?
In the third paragraph, the
Right.
red is what you all had,
Right.
and the blue is
Right.
what we recommend, just to be clear. So,
Yeah. Right. Okay, and you're comfortable with that, or this evening you stated you were uncomfortable with that?
So I'm comfortable. We're comfortable, and I can speak for you all, or the CPC, but the first parish is reasonably comfortable with it. This is kind of like negotiating, if you will, but everybody's trying to keep us in a spirit of collaboration because we all are trying to get to the same goal on this. We're trying to make sure that adequate sort of protections of everybody's sort of whatever possibility could occur. And so, but there's not an ownership. So, to Kelsey's question, I'd be open if you want to do some wordsmithing around it to make it clearer. This was not really done by a committee. It was, done by a couple of people who came up with an idea. So you may want to look at the language to tighten it up, and that's fine. We're just trying to make sure that the concept that we're trying to say, the public is not just open to the public, anybody can come in, because we may not have people in place to be able to make sure there is give the people an experience that they want to have, or have the security necessary to be there. So we have to think about those elements when we open to the public. So we're looking for other opportunities that would give us credit, if you will, for being open to the public, such as having school groups come in and do a program with the school groups, or having, the Concord Museum or the National Park or
Right.
some other organization have a host of an event and use the right tap for that purpose. So we're looking for ways that gives us credit to 24 days if we're finding that is, some reason we're having a real hard time being able to be open to the general public during those times.
Well, it's the general public that might give you the income from your gift shop.
Totally agree. Totally agree. This is really not a matter in a situation where this assumes that we are not successful, that we're not able to raise the funding. We make some of the renovations necessary, but we're not able to raise the several $1 million that we need in terms of our expectations. And so what's going to be there is a much more limited really experience about the Right Tavern. It'll be more like what the Concord Museum did when they occupied the place several years ago, which is basically have an interpreter and had, we cleaned up the place, so it was presentable, but it didn't have displays, it didn't have video, didn't have technology, didn't have anything else. It was more, we don't know what we're going to have a way of finding. So we're looking for ways that we can meet the commitment of it being I think what we're all saying is this place is a public building. Although it's owned by the church, it's still a public building and it's viewed as a public building. So people can use the building and use the facilities. And so that's kind of what our intention is.
Well, I think I clearly understand that it's difficult for you to agree to days open to the entire public if in fact the structure is under construction.
Yeah.
Right.
Or it hasn't been
That's-
completed.
Right.
And I understand that's predicated on whether it's $1 million or $2 million of fundraising. Okay. Having said that, I've always stated, and I'm sure I speak for everybody in Concord, that the structure needs to be saved and the structure needs to be maintained for 1,000 reasons. Okay.
Right. Absolutely.
The access to the public is an absolute unique opportunity because not all historic structures are open to the public.
Right.
And clearly you have the structure owned and under the auspices of the church. And their mission is a little different than historic preservation, not to say that they're not in a historic structure and that they don't have this structure under their control. But so I don't know, I hear what you're saying and I hear where we're at. And I'm trying to understand, okay, how do we get to the end and how do we come up with a document that you're comfortable and the church is comfortable to execute so you can receive the grants to do the initial planning, programming, and then structural work that needs to be done. Because it seems like the structural work needs to be done because that's going to guarantee that the structure is going to be here for the next century. So I don't know how you get to the next level. I think Nancy articulated it well. Certainly Francesca with her legalese language and but where are we this evening? I don't know.
Thank you, Michael, because
I don't know where we are, but I think we're all on the same mission, and I think we all want it to happen.
Absolutely right.
Just that I need to understand in simple English in my mind, where are we this evening? What do you need from us today? And how do we get to where you need to be to get this thing going?
Nancy, you wanted.
Sorry, I thought Michael was asking that of Tom, so I kind of lost what I was going to say.
Can
I thought I
ask-
was too. So
Okay,
what do we do?
Would it be inappropriate if I asked Chessie, who is the lawyer here,
Right.
to make some edits to that number 5, the final 5, because a couple of things I agree don't make a lot of sense, and clean that up a little bit. And could we circulate that? Is that, I'm asking you, Anne, amongst the historical commission and you, Tom, and you can share it with them.
Yeah. Maybe.
I don't feel we don't, as Michael suggested, we don't want to hold you up, but I do
Yeah,
feel very
thank you.
strongly. This is a lot of public money. And
Right.
I think
It
that a
is.
better
It
Exactly.
is.
for the
Exactly.
public
Yeah.
is to see it.
Right.
Um,
And Melissa, it might be, based on what Tom is stating, that the grant money will be spent. And if they don't raise X amount of dollars, the structure cannot be open to the public other than having some tenants in there. I mean,
Right.
that's what is on the table, and that decision has to be made, because it may
Right,
not happen.
so, but that's where I'm saying, but the town has committed over $500,000.
Right.
Stabilization.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I think I want to correct that, Michael, because our intent is really we're on a mission to make it open to
I know.
public. It
I'm aware.
may not be open, with getting 15 or 20,000 people rolling through there. I would hope they do. I hope we set it up so that actually creates that kind of deal. It may be more limited in terms of when's it open, so it's only open for the provincial Congress enactment and those periods, and Patriots Day, and sometimes on the 4th of July and some other events. But we very much want to have it, and perhaps what will happen is that you need to sort of outsource it to the Concord Museum or to the Minuteman National Park to provide programming for it, and that First Parish basically serves as a landlord and does that. That's all. But the intent is that we really want the public to be able to just like you said, we protect the building. And to your point, Melissa, earlier, our whole strategy was we start with the structure first. And once we get the structure, understanding what we have to do with the structure, then the next piece is what we can do about programming. And that's kind of what as we're moving from that sort of phase to that, and then the programming affects the structural stuff. So it's a circular, integrated kind of thought. But perhaps the way to get a solution moving forward is that, Francesca and I we talk tomorrow in the next couple of days and kind of work out the language, and it was comfortable for you all, and run it by. So I just want to make.
Melissa, does that make sense?
well, I think so. I mean, if Chelsea
Right.
would be willing to kind of mess around with this a little bit.
I'm happy to work on language aspects. I think the question of substance for
Mhm.
you all is the meetings by community focused organizations. And as a general concept, is the commission comfortable with including that? Because, that's the language that's going to govern in 5 years, 10 years, not just these next 2 years when we're not sure when it's going to be up and running. And we're not going to be able to go back to this meeting and say, well, they said the intent was that there would be a full-fledged museum, basically. But we did agree to this language because there was concern at that time that they wouldn't be up and running for 2 years. So I think that's really, before we go back to drafting, need to make sure that everyone's okay with including that, because if we include that, then meetings will satisfy this provision.
Yeah, and that's not acceptable to me, because that's very limited public access, and you're still using and opening the building. So, Tom, the other thing that you mentioned 15 to 20,000, but last time you were here, you said you were going to design to an assumption of 25,000.
Mhm.
It seems a little upside down. Wouldn't you be looking at what the building could take and then work with the building? This is off. I'm sorry, I'm off on a tangent here.
Sure.
Look
No, absolutely, right. Yeah, we have to
try to reinforce it for a very high level of visitation that
Right.
you might never see.
There's two parts to that. One of was what's the capability of the buildings? What can we do in terms of the design and structural to make it work? And the other side of it is, what do we have in terms of visitors and visitor rate expectations for visitors coming into the place? So there's a market point of view and there's a structural point of view. So you're absolutely right. I wasn't trying to.
So the one thing I thought in that language that says, unless otherwise mutually agreed upon by the grantor and grantee, pending the finalization of plans for public access on the first
Mhm.
floor or something like that. Is that getting close, Jesse? It's not, I'm no legal mind, but
Well, I mean, I would leave that sentence just as it is always in there, because that always allows us to go back
Well, that's true.
to
Mhm,
them and say, look, 64 just is not adequate, and so we're going to start this negotiation all
Right.
over again. But
So what I'm trying to do is,
And vice versa, and they can come to us.
Yeah.
Or to you all and say the
Right.
same thing.
I'm thinking a little with my CPC hat on now.
Mhm.
Do we want to agree to this without knowing what the public benefit is going to be? Right now, if there's no public access, if there's very, very constrained public access for the general public on the first floor, that's a very limited public benefit aside from the drive-by experience people are getting from a stabilized building. So that might have implications for people's willingness to fund things on the first floor that aren't really going to provide for public access. And that relates to your fundraising plan. And maybe a business plan would be helpful.
Mhm. We have a 5-year strategic plan. We do have all that stuff. So
And
Um,
fundraising plans, I mean, those raising lots of money is not easy.
Yeah.
So,
and
I
and
have a question, just to be clear, the 2 grants that you've gotten so far is all associated with stabilizing the building.
right.
Not anything in exhibit design. So the work that Lynn might be doing, or whomever is going to be your exhibit designer, that's another whole amount.
That's a whole other thing. We're paying for land from some of a portion of the second grant, not the first grant, because they did not include her at the time. But the second grant does include, as I recall, a line for a historical architect, and that's what she is. But yes, you're right, Melissa, that the work we're trying to do around the exhibits and what the experience would be is outside of either one of those agreements.
now-
And but we've just to reassure everybody, through the other, we have 150 items that we've identified in the PR that we're protecting. And Lynn is very much tied into that and knows exactly what's going to be protected. So we talk about exhibits, but we're not, in fact, if anything, we're going to accentuate the historical elements that are currently hidden behind doors or, 18
I
coats of
understand
paint
that.
or whatever else. So
But they're not gonna be in any kind of, I don't know how you're gonna, to create an exhibit for the public to see. You don't have any money for that right now. And the general public, I think, my understanding is the main floor is going to be the floor, where you're going to interpret the history, I guess, I meant,
that's where,
interpret the history of the Wright Tavern. And
Yep.
for that, you have no money yet.
that's we have some, but you're right. That's what we're,
And
that's
I
what we're
just
on.
think
That's the
That's
mission we're
what the
on.
public is gonna come in and see. The public is not interested in going in to see.
The public is paying for, as Michael was saying, the stabilization, really the structural things of the building. But, part of the reason you want to set that up is so that the public can have access to it. And that's what we want to do as well.
Yeah.
So, but the funding specifically is tied to really structural security, if you will, elements.
So 2 things. If I don't have a copy of the final signed grant agreement, but the last copy I had said that you could hire historical preservation advisors as well as preservation design and building architects.
Mhm, mhm.
I might, and I think CPC might think that exhibit design might go in there. But I remember in your budget presentation, the HVAC system was totally moved over to private funding.
Mhm.
So that's another item that's hanging out there, but you might be able, I'm a skeptic, as you know.
Yeah, it's
Um,
okay.
Yeah,
It's good to have skeptics in this world.
well,
Keeps
sometimes,
everybody honest.
sometimes. But the exhibit designers might, you're gonna be trying to accentuate the building, blah, 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 blah. I don't know, you could probably make a case for some of that, or they're a subcontractor to Lynn Spencer. I don't know, I don't know her function right now.
Well,
But
I'll be get clear. She is the project leader on the construction and both the design and construction. The Amaze Design, who's the exhibit designers, they are subcontracted to her, but we're paying for her, and so it's not included in her for, actual contract is included as a subcontractor. So we're, but under the, I'll say who's the boss. Land is the boss in this, in terms of what happens inside the building, except for us, I mean, and you guys and all that. So within the contractual world.
I mean, we've been at this for a long time. If I could go back to just asking Chessie, I mean, the fact to me, I'm sort of comfortable as long as it says that unless otherwise mutually agreed upon, that does allow us to.
Yeah.
If we feel as a group in the coming years that it's inadequate, we can speak to you and try and renegotiate something. So Chessie draft something that seems in her legal mind more appropriate, and then we circulate that, if that's okay. What do folks think about that?
I like that idea. I think all comments have to go directly back to Anne, probably.
Yeah, so I mean, everybody, so Chessie, would you send it to Anne, Anne can send it out. We cannot deliberate
Anne?
between each other. It just would have to go back to Anne, and then you're the final arbiter. And if it seems that we're not getting to some sort of consensus, we might have to revisit this next month. But I mean, I'm mindful that you'd like to move on this. I think we've made our points clear. We're trying to protect the public's access.
I'd just like to reiterate that we should double check about the consistency between the signed grant agreement and the final draft of the preservation restriction.
Okay.
So Anne has all of that.
Yeah.
Michael?
Yeah, Francesca, can I ask you a question? Are you there? Did you say yes?
Always,
What?
always, Michael.
So we have you on this commission for your history, passion, and your legal expertise. Not that every board has an attorney. What recommendation, Melissa, if you allow me to ask her, what recommendation do you have from a legal perspective on how we get to the next step? What do you suggest we do, even though you're not suggesting anything right now? What do you suggest we do? Is what Melissa stated, and certainly Nancy articulated everything. Melissa, we need to get this going. Melissa's right. You have a legal mind. What are your thoughts to get this to the next step?
Well, I think that the open question is still how broadly the commission is comfortable with defining what public access is. I think that the hook of being able to come back and renegotiate should be enough, should be sufficient. And I'm worried that by including the phrase meetings by community-focused organizations, we are setting ourselves up for a situation where the commission, will not be happy down the road, and the grantor will have no reason to renegotiate because they're in line with the PR that we agreed to.
Right, and I concur with that. So I mean, that's where we're at. So the upside is we do this, and it may work out what you just said, or we don't do it, and then we have some serious structural problems with the building. Right? Am I right, Tom?
No, I wouldn't take it that far. I think that we can work out a language, and really, it's all about just getting this one little section in the PR resolved. And because this was the thing that came up in the last meeting, I think we can work out a language, and if it is only including school groups, maybe that's sufficient, and then the point about saying if something is unacceptable, we can come back and talk about it. Maybe that's sufficient. So I think that's all it is. It's just, I think it's quite simple, and then finish up everything else in the documents there, and then.
Is that all it is, Nancy?
Well, I don't know if town council accepted
Right.
the comments that were made at our last meeting, because
Well, I don't think saw it, right?
What?
Yeah, town council has not seen this yet. Frankly, I would.
well, then Melissa, then there were some small but important changes where the language in the draft PR, the last one I saw, referred only to preserving or whatever of the exterior without including reference to the interior. Hang on.
While Nancy's looking for that, I would just like to point,
Got it.
reiterate what Chessie has said. It strikes me that I would feel more comfortable, we just take out the entire sentence, the public shall be defined as, it just leaves it as, will be open to the general public on days and times, but no less than 64 days. Why are we defining general public any other way than general public?
I can tell you the because First Parish is very uncomfortable with that commitment. They're comfortable with having other uses of the building than just open to the public. Because there may be situations 20 years from now, 50 years from now, where in fact, the museum nature of the building is no longer relevant, or that is no longer financially possible. So First Parish was uncomfortable, and so I was looking.
Phrases in there, Tom, that protects you or us.
Yeah, I think and maybe that's adequate. Maybe I need to go back to the First Parish people and say that, but I do know that there was some, a lot of concerns that says, wait a minute, you're making us make sure that is open to the public. What about 20 years from now? You're not successful at really making it'll be a nice museum, but it really won't, it'll be more like the Emerson House, or it'll be more like the Thoreau's house. It's really not, it's not that attractive to people for whatever reason. And therefore it becomes financially just, a real sinkhole for the church. And so I think there's some concerns about having some flexibility at the front end, so we don't have to go back every time there's negotiating, because I don't want to do that, and everybody else. So I was trying to create some language that gives the church some flexibility about how does it meet its commitment to public access, rather than having it just simply open to the public where anybody can walk in and walk through the place. Because we don't know about staffing, we don't know about what kind of people we need to have, we don't know what kind of security we need to have, all those kinds of things.
It says the general public on days and times set by you guys, you control it.
No,
Yeah.
that's.
But we want to be consistent with the message there. So it's really, the intent is to open to the public. I mean,
Nancy, Nancy,
I'm
you
just-
wanted to say something. You seemed uncomfortable with that. Why don't you say what?
I'm really troubled by this, and I want to say that if the church at some point in time decides it doesn't want to be open to the public because it's not working out for them financially, then there is a provision that money that was used for public benefit of the building goes back to the town. So that, I don't see, you're supposed to give the money back if there's no, that public access or that public benefit isn't there. So that's one thing. And then, I don't know. We don't know what you're going to do. So it's really hard. It's hard to say. I do like the idea that maybe, I don't know. I really would like to see what's going to come of this, because you've got a great committee. I love all those people that I know.
Yeah.
You're not going to come out with any small ideas.
I know.
So that's a real problem, because what you need is some pragmatic thinking going on here. But maybe they'll have a pragmatist on their committee. So I would like to see, before I on CPC vote for anything more, I would really like to be more certain of the public benefit. And we don't know that until you know what you're going to provide.
Right.
So it's a dilemma, but.
We're in a catch-22. So how do we?
We are.
You're going back to that idea of as mutually agreed upon, and maybe that can be worked out somehow. So do you want to know the last thing on page 6 of the draft agreement that I think just should include the interior as well as the exterior? Everybody got the patience for that?
Well, I don't-
yeah, you have to.
I don't have that
be
document.
clear about it, because nobody, I don't think anybody has the copy. Right?
I can write to Ann about that. It's very important that in the preservation restriction, the language applies to the protection and preservation of the interior as well as the exterior. It's sort of in a few places defaulted only to the exterior.
Okay,
And that's not what, what we're all wrapped up about.
right. No, that's actually excellent. Thank you, Nancy. So we
Yeah,
can
that's
include
easy to
that.
correct. I think where our intent is to protect the interior space. We spend a lot of time, energy. So I think we're, you know, these were drafted by the attorneys. It's been run by the town council. I'm fine, whatever, if you want to make other alterations to this thing related to that, as long as it's, I'm just trying to keep,
Yeah, I think these are,
the issue of public access was the only issue that I had on my agenda. So that was related to the PR, but
all right, good.
So can I go back to asking folks? We may not, I mean, Jesse, I don't know if you can craft something that would make us all happy. Do you think?
Is it okay for Tom and me to speak offline?
Yes, yeah, oh, yeah.
should we come up with it? I think you-
We just can't
Yeah.
deliberate other than here. We can't, you, Michael, Nancy, me, Alan, anybody else. So yes, you and Tom could talk.
Okay.
And
Great.
it's helpful.
We'll work out something, and we're gonna get this right, and I think that's what's really important for everybody's interest in. That's what we're trying to do here.
I have a question. In order to expedite this, because I understand where we're at and I understand where you need to be, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I'm curious, and is there a way that when Francesca and you speak and you're working on this, that somehow there's communications going on during the next 30 days rather than waiting until the 30th, whatever, for the next meeting in order to discuss the things that we'll be discussing? Is that okay, Melissa?
Well, it is okay. That's why I was saying, if Jessie, then she submits something, she sends it to Ann sends it out to all of us. You
Okay.
make your
Right.
comments back to Ann, and I will
Great.
rely on Ann to
Yeah.
come on call and send it back out to us. We just can't, we can't deliberate.
Right, I know.
I
But
can't
we,
have coffee.
but can we discuss the resolution to this prior to the next meeting that we're all looking at and
Well, only the
evaluating?
way I'm saying, it's got to
Yes.
be this, through Ann.
Great.
Otherwise,
Right.
it violates the public meeting law.
Right, okay. And is that okay?
Yes, yes. of
Okay,
Yeah.
good. So let's get this done.
It works for me. I have to do it by next week because I went away for 2 weeks.
Eventually, we will need to vote, and that
Mhm.
would be
Yes.
at the next meeting. I don't
Right.
think unless, I mean, presuming that Jesse and Tom are gonna come up with something that is Jesse's representing our interests in the towns.
Right, yeah. Francesca, you have time for this, Francesca?
Yeah.
You have time for this,
Until
right?
this third baby arrives, I'm.
I was gonna say, you have
Okay.
time for this.
Yeah.
Okay, great. That's it.
It's great.
What are you doing with the other two?
Yeah. They're fine.
Okay, so I
Well,
think we've got
thank
sort of
you.
a plan. I'd like to just move, if it's okay with everybody, let's move on and then hopefully we will have a final vote next time. And Tom, you won't have to be here. We can
That
just.
sounds great. That's great. Thank you all. And once again, it's always a pleasure to tell you what we're doing. So we got more news to come. And Francisco, I'll reach out to you tomorrow and we'll get some time next week because I'm gonna be
Great.
gone. So, great. Be
Okay,
well,
thank
you all.
very much.
Have a good night.
Thank
Okay.
you. Good night.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom.
So moving on to observer reports. I just, on behalf, Alan, I know it could not be here tonight. I wanted to, I'm sorry, because I was hoping to talk to him a little bit more about this. The chair of the the Historic Districts Commission and the whole HDC is interested in a closer relationship with the Historical Commission. How that is defined and how that would work is not terribly clear, but one suggestion is that a member of this Historical Commission attend the meeting of the HDC. And I have explained to Luis that, who is their chair, that in fact, one of our members does observe Um, and he was saying, to make it a permanent role, but I don't think you can do that without changing the charter, and I mean, that's too complicated, but as a voluntary effort on the part of a member of the Historical Commission to observe the HDC and vice versa. And I said to him, we always would welcome a member of the HDC, but I kind of, I'm not expecting any answers right now, but if you guys, any of you have an idea about how we could facilitate a closer relationship with the Districts Commission, please feel free to make the suggestion.
I think
Well,
coffees with them, and it'd be perfectly informal to start with, and we could see where that went.
what did you say, Nancy? I'm sorry, I didn't hear all that.
We should all go to coffee more often together.
Yeah,
Well, but we, you can't do that because,
Yes, we can.
two of us can.
With HDC
Oh,
and,
one of us to one of them. That's always fine. Yes.
or I forget what a quorum is here. I think we could have 2 and 2, but I may be counting wrong. So.
Yeah.
So don't
but
worry.
I'm curious, the planning department staff, not that they're not overloaded or overwhelmed, and I understand they are, they can communicate directly with us and directly with them without breaking any town rules, right?
Sure.
Well, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it would
And
seem,
you could go talk with somebody on the HDC. That's perfectly fine. You could talk to all of them.
Right.
Except it has to be at a public meeting if it's all of them. That's not a problem. I think
Okay.
he is suggesting more when they are actually deliberating that a member of this historical commission, they're actively hearing. I mean, they can't participate other than to ask questions, right, or comment. But it's just, I mean, I think you understand it.
but Alan is observing the meetings, right? So Alan is
Yeah, I
Alan?
don't think he
Okay.
can observe all of them, but that's the
Oh,
idea. The thing is,
Okay,
so,
I get-
so moving on from there, the planning
Okay.
board, I try to listen in on the planning board, particularly because they will be they're the committee that actually implements the scenic road bylaw, and they're the ones who would be hosting the hearing. So at the last meeting, October, whatever, 14 minus 25, anyway, they did take it up, but there was no resolution of what the rules and regulations would be. I was a little disappointed in the tenor of the meeting and kind of the objections of the CPW. So they will be taking this up at a future date. Elizabeth Hughes, whom we know is the town planner, she's going to work with them to come up with a new set of rules and regulations and then send it back to all of us at the Historical Commission. We will comment on them, and then it goes back to the planning board. So this is a long, drawn out process. But given the fact that it's taken 40 some years to get it on the books in the first place, I think we got time.
About right.
And then moving on, Nancy, I know you observe Public Works.
Yeah, I was at the Public Works Commission. I can tell you they are a very detail-oriented bunch of folks, and they follow very closely structured agenda. They start their meetings at 4 o'clock, so I had to leave because I had other commitments by 5 o'clock. But I'm going to try to catch up with them again. Their minutes come out fairly quickly, so by next time I'll have a little bit more about what their current thinking is about the scenic roads bylaw. I didn't hear too much about scenic roads regulations, but I was very interested in a chart that they had on a PowerPoint presentation. It was a capital improvement projection for the next 5 years with very detailed line items for their expenditures in their budget. I think we need to be carefully watching things like road improvements because of the Complete Streets projects or Complete Streets ideology that sometimes can conflict with historical characteristics of our roads and towns. But I'm trying very hard to develop a collaborative relationship with them. And I think there's a lot we can do together around Concord's roads, particularly stone walls and roadsides. So I just have kind of a crazy idea right now about that. And we could maybe target some kind of joint action and application to CPC for cleaning up our historic roads before 2025. So
That would be very nice, especially since, I don't know, did all of you see the memo that they prepared a lengthy memo for the planning board, coming up with all kinds of reasons why the scenic road bylaw really is still not a good idea, and how it would gum up the works, be expensive, and on and on and on and on and on. Most of which struck me as they're not going to happen. They already oversee the trees. This is only going to happen on one of the 9 roads, only when it, so, you know, so Elizabeth sees that. And so, you know, we have a ways to go. Ultimately, we'll resolve this. And I think Nancy's got a great idea, because I think we all agree we want the roads, the walls, the stone walls to be in good shape, the trees cared for. But when you bring up the complete streets, it's unclear to me how that is interpreted for the town.
It's very interesting. I think everybody on this commission should look it up. There is a complete streets policy, and complete streets, if it is if the concepts are implemented without sensitivity to historic and rural agrarian kind of characteristics of a town or a place, can be pretty tough. But the language for Concord's complete streets policy that the select board passed does provide very strong language about preserving town character and whatnot.
Yes, it does. It does. And it doesn't talk about granite curbing.
Well, an interesting thing is a lot of complete streets funding may be coming from the state. So kind of free money. But speaking of free money, I also I'm the chair of the Scenic Byway Committee, Battle Road Scenic Byway Committee. And that committee has applied for a federal highways grant for a variety of things. Some of the towns along the byway are getting things like parking lots and crosswalk improvements and such. But the piece that I put together runs from Route 2 all the way out to Barrett's Farm, and would include some work on either replacing or adding new split rail fence, cleaning up roadsides from invasives and whatnot, and some landscape rehabilitation along Lexington Road, Barrett's Mill Road, maybe a little along Lowell Road. So if we get that grant, it could be $600,000 toward byway improvements. And there's also a component for signage. I think Concord's not going to be all that wild about signage, so probably not much of that, but that's free money, and W would really like that.
Yeah.
So
Sounds great.
Okay. So Rebecca's not here. I don't know if Michael or if you and Chessie, if there's a committee or commission that you would be particularly interested in, or double up with the HDC, which I think they meet, you know, twice a month, and there's a lot there. So if that would be of interest.
Happy to do whatever you would need, you know, if you.
Well, I mean, I think the key ones are the Public Works, the Planning Board, the HDC. I know, I don't, Board of Appeals, Zoning Board, I think not so much. I think the HDC is the area where I know that they've been calling for, you know, we'd like to be more collaborative. And it's a lot for one person to go both times. So, or, you know, it's just even reading their minutes, because Ann does the minutes and we know she does terrific minutes.
Right.
yes, she does.
But they only meet once a month also, right?
Well, they meet twice a month.
Public
Oh,
Works.
twice? Oh, I'm talking about the HDC.
I know. I'm just saying, don't forget Public Works.
Well, I know, but yeah, so either of those, I just, just kind of staying on top of it. So if that would be of interest, I'm just,
Sure.
you know, just asking.
Sure.
So I do like to move on to number 3, only, and, you know, we voted on this last time, but since then Anne has pointed out some, you know, some, well, not particularly, well, first of all, language that didn't make any sense, speaking of, you know, fragment sentences. Also some aspects of the document that don't apply really anymore. So she is willing, thank you, Anne, to look it over in more detail and propose maybe some changes. We didn't submit it to the town manager for signage because Anne took another look at it. And I don't really know the history of the administrative code, and I doubt anybody on the commission does either. The last one I had known about was 1982, then it got updated in 2019, but we still haven't voted, you know, that's still in draft form. So if it's okay with all of you, I would like to let Anne take a crack at it. It hasn't been signed for years, so I think a few more months won't hurt. Because I think,
Great.
I think she's got some very good ideas.
Yes.
So not that she has, you know, she doesn't have anything to do.
All right.
So moving on to the Concord Prison Cemetery interpretive panels. I have to look to you, Anne, because I'm not sure what this is.
Well, we've been approached, I guess this is actually another CPC grant, along the Bruce Friedman Rail Trail.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
Is the prison cemetery, and they're looking to gather a group to come up with interpretations for the cemetery, because the graves are unmarked.
Right.
And I guess there's a particular push to mark the graves of military veterans. So I was asked to bring it to the commission to see if anyone would be interested in working with this group.
Interesting. I don't feel, I'm not, I think he's like a public historian, a historian from the area. Any ideas, folks?
When you said a historian from the area you felt would
Well,
be
someone
appropriate.
would need to do the research. I remember when I think Pat
Yeah,
Ruse.
right. Dr. Ruse.
Dr. Ruse came before us and expressed the concern she had, and which I thought was very laudable. And
Right.
I think she's gotten support from certainly, I think, Marcia Rasmussen.
Masha, right? Masha.
I'm not a professional historian. I would not know how to go about doing this. I think there, you know, someone like Beth Van Duzer is a professional historian. I mean, I would personally reach out to her. I think what they're looking for help on what would be appropriate panels. I don't know how the planning department has done it in the past, because they've got panels up along the rail trail as it is. So who did that?
I'm not sure.
I don't
I
know.
know that I'll be involved to some degree, but right, I won't have time to.
Okay,
do
I
the
mean,
research.
maybe, I mean, I would be willing to reach out to Beth and ask to help them. I realize what they want. I think it's appropriate. So unless anybody has any ideas, I'll take that on. Or try. Actually, what I should do is just call Jane Gordon, right, Nancy? Jane Gordon knows everything about Concord.
I don't even have her number anymore.
Um,
We'll have to get that from Tom.
Okay, so the SQUAS Sachem Trail update. Well, we have a variety of updates. I would like to ask Anne. Anne attended a conference? Is that what
It was just talk.
Yeah.
In Natick. So obviously Natick is a center of Native American history. It's one of the key praying Indian towns. I happen to live in Natick. So the Historical Society had a talk that I went to over the weekend. And I guess even the pronunciation has been incorrect. So
Yes.
I guess it's not Sachem, it's Sachem is the way we're supposed to be pronouncing it. Also, I mean, the reason I went was to sort of, introduce myself and get to know the group, because there are, I guess, 3 groups of Nipmucs who are still active in Natick. They still pray in the church there. And then there's the Nipmuc Council, and there's some other group as well. And there's a woman who's going to be giving a talk in December, who is not only is she Nipmuc herself, she's a genealogist. And I noticed in not only Jim Sherboom's write-up, but in, I think it was Lisa Brooks, and then also these websites, that there are a lot of connections between the Concord Native Americans and Natick, that many of them began here, but then moved to Natick. So I think it was Squaw, or,
Son Squaw.
Squaw's daughter
Yeah.
married and moved to Natick. Tahadawan's son, or no, Tahadawan's daughter, Tassin, married Robin, who moved to Nonantum and then to Natick. And then others, after all the Native Americans were sent to Deerfield during those terrible times during the
Wow.
Phillips War, they went to Natick after they came back to the mainland. So most of the Native Americans who were in Concord ultimately ended up in Natick, and they're still there, and so we can talk to them. And
Can I just say, what town is Nonantum?
that's Newton.
That's Newton. Okay. So what was Natick called in those days?
Natick. It's
It was
Native
called-
American word,
It was, okay.
and it was only occupied by Native Americans. There
Oh,
were
okay.
no English people in Natick.
Wow.
What was Newton?
Nonantum.
Oh.
Because Jim in his write-up refers to Nonantum. Okay,
And
Um,
Robin, of course, is also in Newton too, the section.
right. Now, I didn't, that's how it gets its name. So also, Nancy, if you want to speak to a little bit more about the neighborhood, I mean,
Yeah, I just learned that the neighbors had been getting together, and they've been talking about the
neighbors on Squaw Sachem Trail, by the way.
neighbors on Squaw Trail.
Years.
There aren't too many of them, but they had been looking at alternative names, and they'd been researching and whatnot, and they had called the Land Trust, and the Land Trust, I'm still connected with them, and they called me, and I told them to call Melissa. But I think it's very interesting. One of the things that they found that I hadn't heard before from Jim Sherboom, a lot of their research from this third-hand discussion I had seems very similar to what he was finding and what Kathy Angel was finding. But they had turned up that Squaw Sachem Trail used to be called Walnut Street or Walnut Road. And so that's kind of an easy way out when you don't know the real name of the person.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I think they'd just be interested in knowing what Jim has prepared and what Kathy's been finding out. And it just,
I sent this, did you forward this to them? Jim's document, I sent this to you.
no, I have it, but I did not do that yet because
Oh, okay.
I don't know who the person is from the neighborhood who.
Yeah, I don't, so they're like,
I asked the land trust to send them your contact information.
okay. I think there are 5 houses there.
I think that sounds right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
this is that-
And they understand that because it's a private road, they understand from somebody in town, an official, that they don't have to go to town meeting. They just need to get the agreement of the neighbors, the abutters, and go through the planning board. So that's the information they got. So there's a little bit of process to clarify, I think.
Because what Marcia had explained to me,
Yeah.
that may be true unless it was initially approved at town meeting. So, but that's a matter of public record. We can find that out for them.
Yeah. Just a matter of figuring out the
Yeah.
bureaucracy.
I don't know, even if it had to go to town meeting, I would suspect it would be popular because it has all the support of the people who live there.
Mhm.
I don't know.
And they're still looking at, yeah, I mean, they're still in the process of looking at options and alternatives. So it just expands the conversation, I think. And
Well, I think it's great. We've come a long way from a couple of months ago when we knew very little. And the nice thing that the work that Jim has uncovered is corroborated by what Anne has learned and what Professor Brooks has learned. I also would want to say that Simone Monteleone from the National Park sent me some additional contacts that I have asked Ryan Hanley to look into, because he already had reached out to Lisa Brooks. I didn't think it was appropriate for all of us to be, willy-nilly reaching out. So Ryan was going to do that, and he'll report back what he's learned. But she had given us several of the names of the folks that the National Park Service work with on issues like this.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay.
about
We already told you about the scenic road bylaw update. That update is that we have a long way to go. So I think the next item would be, unless Nancy, you've got something, yes.
I think you should talk about the section 106.
Oh, so I forwarded to all of you. I hope you've seen your email. We finally received notice of a meeting of the consulting parties. This is the Route 2A Battle Road. The project that Mass DOT Federal Highways is doing to so-called resurface the road. This recall, we had a lot more discussion about this several months ago, and it's been a long time since we've heard anything from them. So I sent that to you. I think it's November 4th at 10 a.m. I also forwarded it to the members of the select board, and I also forwarded it to people, our new reporters for the Concord Bridge, because I had some months ago talked to Betsy Levinson, who is the news editor, that she might be interested in learning a little bit more about what Mass DOT is planning for the Battle Road. So stay tuned, and I hope you are free to participate on the 4th.
Yes.
Okay.
It would be great to have participation at that meeting.
Oh, I sent it to you. I'm pretty sure I copied you. Anyway, I'll double check. But at any rate, there's another group that I feel like they're sort of stonewalling us too.
So what I'm learning that's a little bit related to this is the U.S. Air Force Base Hanscom is temporarily opening Airport Road at the far eastern end of the national park, and for processing all the truck traffic that goes into the base. The other part of that I just learned about is that they're also totally reconfiguring Hanscom Drive closer to the gate, not on 2A, but I have heard reference to something that there will be another project that Mass DOT is going to be responsible for at the intersection of Route 2A Battle Road and Hanscom Drive. And I have no idea what that might look like, but it's a little bit, more than a little bit concerning to have this temporary opening we've tried not to have that happen for a long time when I was with the National Park, and we've tried to keep Hanscom Drive quiet. And now we'll see what Mass DOT is responding to in terms of the whole Route 2A project. And what I've picked up is that they're going to probably be leaning heavily towards bicycle accommodation and crosswalks and things like that. So we'll see how that turns out. But it could be, you put them all together and it's a big deal. Potential.
you know, gosh, I wouldn't even say I'm a purist, but for knowing what I've known, and Nancy, you know it so much better than I do, what what it took to create this park, and then to see, you know, putting crosswalks and probably stop lights and completely reconfiguring it into just another throughway.
We'll see. We'll see.
Okay, well, anyway, November 4th at 10 o'clock.
Everybody
So now we can move on to the minutes, which I thought were excellent. The only thing that I have is, it was Kathy Angel, Angel.
I had that too.
Pardon?
I had that too.
Okay, other than that, gosh, I learned a lot. I didn't, you make it sound so smart.
I had,
Yes, I was impressed. But other than that, change, does anyone else have any amendments, corrections?
I'm looking for it. I don't know, Ann. It's pretty hard to find fault with these
I
minutes.
know, the minutes are extraordinary, Ann.
Yeah.
Or-
I think I have referenced that in a communication to you. They are
Yeah, please
unbelievable.
put that in the minutes, and we are impressed by your.
This is not a correction to the minutes, but I'm still confused about that 12-day minimum requirement and where it came from. And I'll talk to Ann about that.
Oh,
I'm still confused about that.
yeah.
I recently went to the Vale in Waltham. If none of you have been there, it's incredible place. Maybe just me. That's a PS. That's it.
That's your bill, your,
No, that's across the street from where.
oh,
I
that-
worked there too at one point when I worked for the store.
oh, okay, oh, okay.
What? I didn't hear.
I was at, where you talked about the Vale. Anne said she had worked for the Vale, at the Vale as well.
Oh, I'll talk to Ann about that too.
Okay, so if any, but no, if there are no other corrections, can I have someone move that we approve the minutes of September 8th?
So move.
I second.
All in favor?
I,
Please say aye. And do I have to have it? Yeah.
You know what I learned at the DPW meeting yesterday was if all members of the commission or the commission or the committee are present, you don't need to do a roll call vote for anything.
Okay, except that we're all not here.
No, I know. I'm just
Okay,
putting-
from now on, everybody better show up, then we don't have to.
Aye.
Yeah, there you go. You don't get the. you don't-
Okay, so all in favor, aye. So the minutes are approved. Thank you. Just that one correction. Thank you, everybody. I hope, Jesse, that's okay, what we've asked you to do.
Oh, yeah.
Also asked, well, there's one other thing I want you to know that I asked Jesse to look into. Anne sent me earlier this week, the DPW had found, you know, the oval signs, we talked about this before, the oval signs have information, historic information about different streets around town. It was a program that started sometime in the 90s. No one has taken ownership of it. We do have one Excel spreadsheet that lists what we hope the definitive list, but we're not too sure about that. At any rate, Anne was sent pictures of these oval signs that had been taken down, mostly because they were damaged in some way. And they're willing to fix them and put them back up. They're not entirely sure where they should go. So I asked Jessie if she, because she's a brilliant researcher, could kind of do some research on there are 7 of them, 6 or 7 of them.
Who's they?
DPW, CPW.
Okay, so here's an interesting thing. Aaron McCloskey is the highways and grounds supervisor. He is so proud of an effort that he's recently undertaken to replace all the mangled and mangy looking posts on signs around town and get them replaced with a plain black post and replace, you know, obsolete signs or whatever. And
Well, he may well be the guy who found these.
he might be, and he's very proud of this effort because if now I go around town, I look at all these mangy posts, and he's very careful to match the things that attach the signs to the post with the colors of the signs. So you're not going to see black attachments on a red stop sign. So seems very attentive to visual stuff and stuff.
Well, do you know who found them?
I don't know the person.
Now,
I have it, but I don't know that.
I wonder, well, anyway, I'll send them to the rest of you, but Jessie, because this, you know, she can have, her baby can even be born and she doesn't have to wait until it's done. It's just nice that somebody, so this is I wonder if it is Aaron, because somebody is going through the old files and old stuff and these.
He supervises the sign guy.
Nancy, what was the name?
Aaron McCloskey.
Thank you.
I can send you his,
He's, if you look on the DPW
I'll send you.
page, his name is there and his email.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, so that was just my one other thing. Thank you, everybody. I think we can adjourn the meeting.
Good to see everyone.
Good evening. Nice to see everybody. Good night.
Okay, so good night and thank you all.
Good night.
Ann and Melissa.